Thank you for having me. I want to say one thing about the chyron. Donald Trump made Donald Trump president.
Right.
I just.
When you say the chyron, you mean the strap that we've got on the screen describing you?
Yeah, said the man who made Trump president.
Does he get annoyed when he hears it? Is he all down to you?
I get it. I get annoyed. Donald Trump made Donald Trump president. I mean, he's a unique individual. He made himself president. I happened to come in the last 88 days and just put some stability in the campaign and help with messaging and focus. And
he told me about 3 weeks after he won, we had a long conversation, and he told me that you had basically mapped out for him the way he could win, that the states he could swing, and it was almost exactly how you told him the pathway would be.
Yes.
How could you have been so certain that this was how your guy could win?
On the 13th of May, when the New York Times story broke that really blew up Manafort, I talked to then candidate Trump that night, and I said, look, if you just focus on this populist message, which you really are a populist, and because you've known him for 25 years, and you've been doing this for the last 18 months, 2 years, just get back on message. Talk about stopping mass illegal immigration and limiting legal immigration to get our sovereignty and our jobs back, bring back jobs from China and get us out of these foreign wars. Just stick to these kind of basic messages, even though you're 16 points down. To 100% metaphysical certitude, you're going to win. The country was looking for leadership, and the country was particularly looking at these corrupt and incompetent elites that Hillary Clinton kind of was a representative of. And I just told candidate Trump at the time, if you just stick to who you are, and particularly we're going to focus on the upper Midwest, we're going to focus on those places where the Democrats are not taking their message, and that's where he ended up winning.
You call it populism, and people see it as incredibly divisive, and actually at times possibly racist. The Muslim ban, for instance. The
Muslim ban, the travel ban that our Supreme Court just upheld.
Yeah, but proposed by Donald Trump, and back in 2015, he suggested a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. I mean, you know, what is that going to do other than make life difficult for a majority of Muslims who live in the US, who are peaceful and see themselves as patriotic citizens?
Donald Trump sees them as patriotic citizens too. Donald Trump went to Riyadh. Donald Trump has had more outreach to the Muslim community than any president.
For business reasons?
No, he didn't. He went to Riyadh. Remember, he went to Riyadh to talk about with this conference of 44 Muslim nations to say, hey, we've got to work together to stop radical Islamic terrorism, and particularly the exporting of that into Western Europe and the United States and at home. Number two, we have to help you on the moderation of Islam. And number three, we have to help you with his expansion of Persian expansion in the Middle East. So I think Trump has gone out of his way. And by the way,
so why make it harder for Muslims to travel to the United States when your risk of getting murdered by someone traveling from one of these countries is practically nil?
Those countries that we originally put on the, which was the vetting, to do extra vetting, were all countries that were designated by President Obama. We just took it off of his list.
That is true. I mean, what I would say about it, and I was very critical at the time of that, when he made that announcement. It came immediately after the San Bernardino terror attack, of course, so you had to put it into some context. The eventual travel ban...
Not carried out by immigrants from those countries.
No, but let me just finish the thread I was going to say, which is that in the end, the Supreme Court has upheld the 7-country travel ban, and they were the 7 countries that Obama had already identified as the most problematic. So I think we've ended up in a position that most people can at least understand is more reasonable. But I have to say, when he first said that day, we want an immediate and total shutdown on any Muslims coming in, I winced. I thought, Donald, what are you doing? I've known you a long time. This is an awful thing to be saying.
He did moderate that over time.
He did.
Remember, he did moderate that over time.
But when he said it originally, how did that make you feel?
I think at the time it was a necessary jolt to the system. He was trying to get people to pay attention. This is what Trump does. It's what he did here in the last 24 hours. He is a disruptor. And one of the reasons he's a disruptor is to kind of break through the noise, right, and to get people's attention. That's what he did then, and he had a more moderate policy going forward. He was the one that had more outreach to the Middle East and more outreach. We're more engaged there now in a peaceful way, not going in wars in Iraq.
Do you ever wince when he says stuff? I mean, he's so inflammatory sometimes.
It's tough to make me wince.
And also,
I bet. I mean, you're a tough old bruider, but are there things he and
I bond.
I
was called the enabler.
But you must acknowledge that if you're a Muslim American, you don't want that attention.
It's the Muslim Americans, I think, that also want to make sure they live in a peaceful society and are not have these terror attacks.
Interestingly, in America, there are.
And by the way, I don't think Muslim Americans think that Donald Trump's going after him. I think what he did at Riyadh, I think the outreach he's done to the Muslim community has shown
But why ban Muslims coming to America, but not ban the one thing which causes more deaths than any of these terror attacks, which is guns? I mean, people cannot understand how you can institute a Muslim ban, but you don't ban the thing that's responsible for
guns in the United States?
Yeah.
No, I think that's ridiculous. No, guns is what keeps us safe in the United States. Your interpretation of guns is totally incorrect.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we
I'm
have
strong.
We have
I'm a
32,
strong Second Amendment.
But we have 32 gun deaths a year in this country, and we're a fifth of the size of America. You have 32,000 a year. How does that keep America safe? How does it buy into we want Americans not to worry about being killed by
the gun? By the way,
terrorists?
no, but that's not law-abiding gun owners. That's the criminals. They're in the United States.
Right, but in the Trump,
and we have the gangs.
But
and
in
all
the Trump
that.
presidency,
and President Trump is a tremendous law and order president.
I get that, but right. So on that point, though, in the Trump presidency, I think it's 8 people have been killed in America by Islamist terrorism. One big incident in New York. Whereas in the same period, probably 50,000 people have been killed by guns. And obviously, look, we come from a different culture. I get that. And it was a big campaign of mine when I was at CNN. And I have to be honest, I lost it. Nobody really wanted to hear a British guy talking about this. So I get it. But do you think,
I remember that.
But do you think there's anything that can be done, Steve?
I think the thing that can be done is I think what can be done is build a southern wall and stop the cartels. You know, most of the violence in the United States comes from drugs and comes from cartels and comes from gangs. I mean, if you look in the inner cities, they prey on working class blacks and Hispanics. They're the ones that are the victims of this, and that's what President Trump's trying to say when he's trying to build a southern wall, when he's trying to stop the drug cartels from coming up. Now they're the human trafficking cartels. That's how they make their money.
So
President Trump is look. You've known him for many decades. This guy is not a racist. He's one of the most loving guys I've ever met. He's a tough guy, but I've never seen him as a racist. And one thing I want to say about populism. This kind of populist nationalist movement you see throughout Europe, it is not racist. If you look in Hungary, if you look in Poland, if you look in Italy.
The protest in Charlottesville by racists, why did Donald Trump say there were many fine people on both sides?
Because, hang on for a second.
There aren't many fine people amongst racists.
The first night, when people go after these monuments, because I come from the South, and some people said shrouds should be put on those monuments and they should be taken down. Okay, the Confederate generals. There are other people that say it's part of Southern heritage and they should stay. Those people have a First Amendment right to protest, whether they take them out in shrouds, etc. That's what President Trump was talking about. The people, the neo-Nazis, the neo-Confederates that come, also Antifa. So you give Antifa, you take Antifa.
Why not condemn the neo-Nazis?
He has condemned. Donald
They're
Trump.
not fine people.
Donald Trump, by the way, he said there are fine people on both sides. What he meant and what he was said is that people that come to peacefully protest, the people that both want to take the Confederate monuments down and those that want to leave the Confederate monuments because of their culture, there are fine people on both sides. That's just Americans. Like today in London, you're going to have 100,000 or 200,000 people exercising their rights to say, we don't appreciate Donald Trump coming to the country.
Partly as a result of what he said about that protest.
But the neo-Confederates and the neo-Nazis, Donald Trump has said, I have said, have no place. It's the mainstream
Would you
media.
march alongside a neo-Nazi?
Do what?
Would you march alongside a neo-Nazi?
That's an insulting question. Absolutely
No,
not.
but
Serve my country. No, but we've said from day one that neo-Nazis and neo-Confederates have no place in the political dialogue. It's Antifa
but fine
that just
people.
about...
What I'm saying, if you're a fine person, you wouldn't march alongside a neo-Nazi.
He's not saying that. What he said is that the peaceful protest about taking down the monuments had fine people on both sides. People who wanted to take them down and people who wanted to keep them. There are many fine people, by the way, in the South that say those Confederate generals should stay.
Right,
they're part of our Southern culture, and that's what he's trying to say. You're trying to say everybody in the South that backs keeping those Confederate...
I haven't said that for a moment. I'm talking about the march.
No, but...
I'm talking about the protest.
No, the protest was 2 protests. You had one that was there about the monuments, then you had the next one the next day. On Saturday, it got violent.
Why does... Steve, let me ask you
But
this.
you don't, by the way, I notice you never go after, and you never condemn Antifa. They came looking for the fight just like everybody else. In fact, there's a bill in Congress now that can't wear a mask.
Let me call time. Anyone that causes violence, to me, is a problem, right?
I agree. And by the way, they should have been shut down. They should not have been allowed to...
Steve, part of the problem of populism, which is rising, and you say none of it is about racism.
No.
But a lot of racists attach themselves to populist movements in Hungary, in Italy. We've seen it all over Europe, and it is beginning to worry people. How and why?
By the way, racists and anti-Semites attach themselves to the left also. Antifa is just, these people are just as racist and just
When you say Antifa, you mean the anti-fascists?
Anti-fascists and these anarchists have just as many racists and just as many anti-Semites. And by the way, the media never calls them out. But our point is that they're bad people on both sides of that, and they shouldn't have participated.
Here's my question.
Call out fascists and
here's my question, Steve. As this populist movement spreads, right, it clearly raises a lot of issues.
Yes, sir.
It's fairly destructive, as you know. It's throwing everything up in the air. It's changing the world order in many ways. And many people are concerned that with it comes a whiff of real racism from racists attaching themselves to what they see as a kind of far-right march. How do you, who does not see yourself in that way, and you don't see Donald Trump in that way, and certainly in my experience of Trump, I've never seen him as a racist, but I do believe racists attach themselves to some of his rhetoric.
By the way, the reason they come and try to attach themselves is because the mainstream media gives them a platform. These people are totally marginal. They're not part of any of these movements. But what happens is that the mainstream media goes out and gives them a platform, so that these racists, can have a platform. They're a creation of the mainstream media. If you cut the cameras off of those guys, they totally fade away. They absolutely fade away.
We have an obligation
what is your aim?
No, it's not. But then why are you not reporting the news on Antifa? Why do you not go after the left, the anarchists? They're just as bloody and just as destructive. And you never
I'll tell you what, yesterday we had a protester who would say that on this programme somebody definitely held her to account. I think what you're saying is absolutely not fair.
No. I'm talking, yesterday was fine, but I'm talking about consistently. The mainstream media does not go after and cover the left like it does the right. By the way, racism, and you go in these populist nationalist movements. If you look at Salvini, if you look at Orban, if you look at what's happening in Poland, look what happens in the Czech Republic today. Even UKIP and Brexit. They're not racist in these organizations. They're trying to attach themselves unsuccessfully.
No, here's my problem with that. I think there are racists attaching themselves to these organizations, and that's the problem. And the question, I guess, for Donald Trump, who is perceived to be leading the populist movement, is how do you distance properly yourself from the racist idiots who attach themselves to this?
This is the whole thing of the elites. They try to point that out because they're trying to protect themselves. This populist nationalist movement on a global basis, is trying to call out the elites that through globalization, particularly in the United States, have helped destroy the working class in our country and the middle class in our country, And it's not going to stop. Our middle class and our working class are now in full revolt against the elites. And you saw it in the Hillary Clinton campaign.
So as a successful billionaire businessman, how is President Trump not part of the elite?
Well, by the way, because he speaks to a populist audience. He connects with these people. Have you seen him in these rallies? Donald Trump actually connects with working people.
Well, just because he speaks to them,
well, because
that means that he's not part of the elite.
No.
Of the elite.
No, listen, is he elite, but he's not an elitist. He's someone he's a multi-billionaire. He's one of the best entrepreneurs in our country. But remember, he's a kid that came from Queens. He's a New York City guy. And he speaks to this audience. Nobody connects to the working people in our country like Donald Trump.
It's a complete distraction to say there is an elite and that President Trump is not part of it.
Oh, it's not. Absolutely not.
Why didn't he?
By the way, can't you see that? Can't you see the elite every day if you watch mainstream media, watch Morning Joe. See the foreign policy elite, the financial elite.
People here don't know what Morning Joe is.
Do you think that we're part of the elite?
Absolutely, there's no doubt.
You're certainly very elite.
Absolutely.
The
total elitist.
Do you know what?
Let me ask you about...
That's totally unfair.
Well, maybe unfair, but it's accurate.
Steve, she's from Croydon. It doesn't get less elitist than Croydon. Let me ask you about Brexit, because
by the way, all the elitists, most of them came from middle-class backgrounds. I say part of the aristocracy.
You just call people elite when you don't agree with them.
Let me ask you about Brexit, because the front page of The Sun, big interview with Donald Trump, and really sending a sidewinder into Theresa May, just as she's hosting him in this. It's a little bit like going to someone's house and saying, I hate your curtains. Should he have been doing this right now, do you think?
Look, Donald Trump's got his own house style, I think he feels, and I think in this regard, President Obama did get involved with the entire Brexit movement by saying you guys are going to the back of the queue. President Trump from day one, when Prime Minister May and her team came over early on, talked to her, gave her, I think, overall advice about how to negotiate to get out of the EU. In addition, we had preliminary discussions, and they told us, hey, now's not exactly the time, but it'll be shortly, to talk to them about a free trade deal
Is
with
he
the
warning,
UK.
is he warning Theresa? You know him better than most people. Is this a warning shot to Theresa May that if you go too soft on Brexit, we will not be able to do the deal that we were originally discussing?
I don't think it's anything subtle. I think it's direct. I think he was saying, hey, we came here, and I think he feels a little misled in the fact that we're prepared to do a major free trade deal with you guys, and we've talked about it now for over a year and a half, and then to come and see that this is, I think, a softer Brexit than even anybody anticipated.
We know that Donald Trump puts America first.
Yes.
It's one of his slogans. Theresa May is in a very difficult position because
It's one of his beliefs. It's not just a slogan.
If she takes the gamble, well, exactly. If she takes the gamble of cutting ties with the EU on the basis of some future promise of a comprehensive trade deal with the United States, and actually he decides that's not in America's interests, she's stitched up.
Well, but I think there's a compelling logic why you want to do a hard Brexit anyway. I mean, I thought the white paper yesterday is that there's no...
Is it a fudge to you, this?
Yeah, well, you have no guarantee. You know, I came out of Goldman's M&A department, and we, you know, as Boris Johnson said about Trump, you go in hard in these negotiations. Yeah. My fear about your white paper is that the EU has already said, guys in Brussels said last night, there's no chance that we accept this. So you kind of try to meet them 3/4 of the way, and they have no interest in trying to meet this. I think this, once again, you see the corporate influence in the City of London, okay, that have wanted to slow walk this thing from day one. They do not want Brexit. They particularly don't want a hard Brexit. It's just like in the United States, you've seen this kind of this movement to make sure that Trump's presidency doesn't go well, okay? You know, they fought Donald Trump tooth and nail, the elites. And you've seen the same thing. Brexit in 2016, I keep saying Brexit kind of was the foreshadowing of the 2016 campaign. These ideas are kind of like a contagion that can move.
We know he's put tariffs on aluminium and steel. What's to stop him putting, you know, we do a deal and then he just puts tariffs up?
Well, because I think if you negotiate a deal, the tariffs will be in there or no tariffs. That's what I think. We're very open.
He
and he was
his mind.
But by the way, not
on the Iran deal, on the Paris climate change agreement. The guy changes his mind.
It's not changing his mind. He has been adamant about Paris. He was adamant about the Iran
deal.
deal.
He's not changed his mind about those things.
Yeah,
he's just decided they're not good deals.
Exactly,
So
and they're not.
He puts America first.
And
we
they're
could lose out.
And they're not good deals. By the way, it's not just the American deal that you lose out on. I think, and that's what Boris Johnson was saying about Trump would go in bloody hard on this. The question you have to be for the sovereignty of British courts, for the whole thing that people voted for. Is this what people voted for 2 years ago? Didn't they vote to leave the EU? Now you're kind of half in and half out, and you're controlled by all the EU economic policies. And that's what makes it very hard, not just for the United States, but for China and other people that want to cut deals. They're really going to have to make a deal with the EU.
Did you actually think you would win the election? And when was the moment
100%.
when you knew we've got this?
I told him that night on August 13th. I said, if you just stick to this plan. Really, the moment I did know it is 5 days later when Hillary Clinton came off the beach. Remember, she hadn't been campaigning because she was so far up. And Donald Trump runs on economic nationalism. We got this.
Do you miss working for him?
I think the guy's a great guy. No, I'm so glad I'm out of the White House.
I wonder whether the moment you knew was when the Access Hollywood tapes came out and it became apparent that you could throw anything at Donald Trump, and it wouldn't affect
Well, I was the one in the room. Remember, they went around the room, and a lot of the people we had a command meeting, you know, either telling Trump to come and apologize or drop out of the race. And I said, hey, he said, what's the probability I win? And I said 100%. He says, don't tell me 100%. You say it all the time. What's the real number? I said 100%. I said, here's why. They don't care about this. What they care about is saving their country. What they care about is their jobs and their kids, okay? And they see you as a leader that can bring America back to its former greatness.
Do you think he's going to get re-elected?
The re-election's the first re-elect is this November. This is not a midterm election. This November, we've now set this up as Donald Trump's first re-elect. The Democrats are out.
And what do you think is going to happen?
I think you've seen from the numbers and how he's now moved the staff aside and he's doing things directly like he used to run the 26th floor of Trump Tower. I believe the blue wave is not going to happen. I think we're going to hold the House and pick up the Senate. And this is why I think on the left, you're starting to see some irrationality because they're starting to embrace the full totality of Trump's win. And in the Supreme Court and the federal courts, they understand Donald Trump's going to be in their life 30 and 40 years from now. He is a transformational president. He's an historic figure. And he is changing the judiciary in the United States. So the progressive left now understands that 40 years from now, Donald Trump's going to be in your life.
Do you think that Roe versus Wade, the right to choose in America is under threat for women who need an abortion?
I don't think so. I'm not saying it. Look, I'm not a legal person. I think gay marriage and Roe v. Wade to me is kind of settled law, but that's for the legal scholars. I think the bigger thing is this thing called administrative law. It's this taking apart of the administrative state. I think that's where Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, these young jurists, are really focused on that. I don't think the social issues are as big as the media makes them out to be.
They mean a lot to women.
Well, I understand that.
Who do you think could beat him? Oprah was once the great hope of the Democrats.
I think I think every one of these candidates, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Christine Gillibrand, all of them, and I think there's about 40 that are making their moves. I think they all need 2019 to get their sea legs. That's why the strategy, I think, this year, this is a re-elect for Trump. Up or down vote on his impeachment in November. Draw them all out on the battlefield now. That's why he went after Elizabeth Warren the other night. Draw all the top candidates out now before they have a year to get ready, and pick them off one at a time.
Final
really
question.
make this a re-elect and take your top 6 people and crush them.
Final question. If you're Theresa May and you've got to see Donald Trump after this bombshells erupted this morning, how would you deal with him? You know.
I tell you what I'd do. I'd walk right in and say, look, here's why I had the white paper I had it. Here's why I think this deal's a smart deal. Here's why I think it gives her control to our border, our money, her whole pitch, and say, look, here's the deal I want to make with you on the free trade deal. I think I can still do it. And walk into it. You know him. He's a business guy. Yeah. This is what happened in NATO. He's not a politician. He's a leader. He's a businessman. He understands the deal. The most important thing I think he said in the Sun article is his experience shows longer deals take. They never get done, and they're always bad. And that's true.
I think he's right.
I think May's got to walk in today.
She's got to tell him. She's got to tell him.
But he respects that. And by the way, he likes her quite a bit. I think he walks right in. She walks right and goes.
I mean, from what you've seen, does Theresa May have that in her?
We'll have to see. By the way, she's Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, so she's got something.
And if you were advising Donald Trump how to deal with the Queen later, what advice would you give him?
Well, he knows. I think he has tremendous respect. You heard last night on the thing, his mother would always watch on TV. Look, his mother's from Scotland. She'd come back every year. He bought Turnberry, quite frankly, so it could be in the open rota. He has a tremendous knowledge, not just of military history, but English history. The very first act we did was bring the Churchill bust back into the White House. He has tremendous a love of this country, and so I think with the Queen it'll be fine. I think Theresa May, she's got to walk in and say, okay, here's the deal.
Steve Bannon, good to talk to you.
Thank you very
much indeed.